So welcome to the first episode of the Naked Eye podcast. Maybe to explain a bit about where this has come from, we wanted to do a platform around the sort of topics and the people and profiles that we come into contact with in the travel world that we've sort of been involved in over the last 15 years. So we wanted a wider platform to be able to talk to the people that we come into contact with, conservationists, photographers, science-based people, also known as scientists, philanthropists and more. And this is where the Naked Eye platform and the Naked Eye podcast has come from. So hopefully we'll be exploring some of these areas and looking at subjects based around climate change, conservation and more from a variety of different perspectives. So quite an exciting time. This first episode, I'm actually interviewed by Lisa Francesca Nand, journalist, writer, filmmaker, and regular on radio and TV, and host of the Big Travel podcast, which you should obviously also check out. We discuss a few things on this. Modern day travel, 48 minutes in Antarctica, how I spent 48 minutes roughly in Antarctica in this recent last few weeks. Hotel quarantine, a bit about my background and how I got into this travel arc and my background and more. So we hope you enjoy it. It's meant to be an open platform. We hope to ask some challenging questions. We hope to come up with some interesting answers. But it's a level playing field, and we hope that people are happy to contribute to it and take it in the good faith that it's meant. Thank you.
I'd say thank you for coming here, but actually I've come to you. It just so happens that you live 10 minutes, actually probably about 30 seconds. I was exaggerating with the 10 minutes, 30 seconds down the road from me.
It's quite handy.
It's wonderful to have you on this special episode, which combines the Big Travel podcast and your own podcast. Just tell us a little bit, first of all, about what you do.
So I run a company called Natural World Safaris. So we run sort of trips worldwide, and we use the safari concept across 42 destinations worldwide: Africa, Asia, Latin America, the polar regions, etc. But using that sort of overland journey concept throughout all of those destinations. So sort of from adventure through to luxury, we pretty much do anything.
That sounds amazing. That's a dream job for many people. How did you get into that?
I did French and African and Asian studies down here at Sussex Uni years ago. Then from there I started leading trips or guiding in Francophone Africa, so Morocco, Madagascar, Ghana, Gabon, Sao Tome, and then later sort of the Congos and CARs and stuff like that. So, and it was generally primate based. So I then set up a company called World Primate Safaris. And then we added in big cats and then bears, and then it got very complicated from a marketing point of view. So we put it all under Natural World Safaris, which is what we are now.
I love the way you describe adding in big cats and bears. I'm kind of like seeing you chucking them into a pot.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm guessing you didn't chuck them into a pot.
No, exactly. No, it was really, so we try and concentrate on that, the focus on right place, right time. So a lot of other companies sort of are destination based, whereas we say, okay, gorillas, where's the best place in the world to see them? And then we tailor and structure everything around that, tigers, etc., or polar bears, things like that. So we really use that sort of right place, right time concept, and then structure everything around that, in terms of the majority of the stuff we do is tailor-made, so bespoke to what our clients want, but equally we do specialist-led departures, etc. as well, and some small groups.
So if I wanted to come to you and say, I want to take my kids to the Galapagos, which I really do, by the way, how would you then go about doing that?
So generally, Galapagos is a slightly more tricky because it's set departures, you've got set itineraries, etc. So, but we work with a lot of different boats out there. So again, a lot of people would just do boat-based. We generally would mix land-based and boat-based activities so that you get the best of both worlds. And that's actually the one destination that I took my son when he was 5 out to Galapagos, and he absolutely loved it because it's very sort of not hands-on, but it's a lot more interactive, you know what I mean? So you get quite close with the iguanas and stuff, and we're obviously doing snorkeling and things. He saw his first shark, at the age of 5, sort of swimming on my back. He was just holding onto my back and sort of dipping down every now and then to see what was below him. So turtles and sharks and stuff. So,
were you adventurous growing up? This sounds. I mean, you didn't go straight into study French and African studies. Where does the interest in that come from?
I've got to admit, I'm not really sure. We travelled a bit as a family, and then I was always definitely interested in wildlife. Like a lot of kids, I wanted to be a vet at one stage. My parents thought I was going to be a priest. And I ended up doing what I'm doing. So
you could have combined the two, a vet priest.
Exactly.
I mean, nobody does that, do they?
Exactly.
Nobody does that.
Exactly. If you weren't
Animal
a successful,
confessionals.
yeah, exactly. Or you weren't a successful vet, you'd need a priest.
I think that's a very good combination.
Exactly.
We should bring back the vet priest, or reinstate or instate the vet priest. So you had an interest in wildlife growing up, and then you studied, and then went off travelling from there.
Yeah.
How did the idea for the business come about?
So I worked for a company that just did gorilla safaris in Uganda, Rwanda. I helped run the UK office for that, and then helped out in Uganda, Rwanda as well. And really, then I was working there. It was a very niche company, a great company. And then I was like, hang on a minute, there's no one that really specialises just in the primate side of things, sort of on a global scale, which a lot of people thought I was quite strange doing because it was very niche. So we did about 3 years as World Primate Safaris. So just doing gorillas in Uganda, Rwanda, and sort of Congo, CAR, lemurs in Madagascar, chimps in sort of Tanzania, orangutans in Borneo. And that worked because we were so niche, and we sort of built a name for ourselves. And that's when we sort of said, right, we can do this with the big cats. And then, okay, we can do this with the bears, So it was sort of a natural sort of evolution from there.
Where's the most unusual out there destination that you currently offer?
I've always loved Madagascar. Madagascar's just sort of, it's the unsung hero. I mean, the endemic fauna there is absolutely incredible. One of the sort of last sort of strongholds in the world. You get a lot of endemic species that you just don't find anywhere else in the world. But if you think about it, it's never on the front cover of a magazine or anything like that. And it should be, it needs so much help. It's one of the worst examples that you can have, worst case studies of deforestation at the moment. So it needs to be sort of put out there, and we do a lot of business in Madagascar. It's a tricky destination to work in as well, but it's stunning in terms of the wildlife. Even Antananarivo, the capital, is a beautiful place to be with the red tiled roofs and the sort of hustle and bustle and the large avenues from the sort of French colonial times and stuff. But then the wildlife that's there, the lemurs, the chameleons, the leaf-tailed geckos, which you literally can be sort of a metre away from a tree, and your guide will be saying, okay, there's a leaf-tailed gecko there, and you show me where it is, and you're sort of standing there looking at it blankly because you can't. It's the camouflage on it is just so incredible. So there's a huge amount to see, and it's a great destination to work in as well. Great friendly sort of people and stuff as well.
What's the most Madagascan thing that has ever happened to you? Because to me, Madagascar is like the cartoon with my kids.
Yeah.
I haven't been. There's King Louis, the lemurs. I don't know if you've seen it. My cultural references are clearly very low at this point. Do you remember any moments that really stand out from your trips to Madagascar? You think, oh wow.
I think just with Madagascar, it's all about it's up close and personal. In terms of the wildlife is literally there right in front of you. It's quite interactive, and that's why it's a great destination for sort of families, young families, as well as sort of, adults, etc. There's something for everyone there, but it's more the sort of intimacy of the destination. It is very sort of up close and personal. You get sort of lemurs bouncing across the sort of lawns in front of you in some destinations. The Indri, which is the largest sort of lemur that still exists today, sort of about 4.5 foot teddy bear like sort of individual, has these haunting calls in the morning, as the sort of sun's rising over the rainforest and stuff. So there's a huge amount there, but also it's about the small, weird and wonderful stuff in Madagascar, as I say, the chameleons and the geckos and everything like that, which is great as well.
You go to Antarctica as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I mean, apart from the fact it's cold.
Antarctica, we do a lot down there. We often do our own exclusive expedition ships down there. We've hosted film crews down there, very well-known photographers, etc. And then we also have sort of departures that we sort of sell into as well. So it's a great destination, pretty wild, quite a difficult destination to work in, but we've done a lot there.
Tell me some of the difficulties you have there.
I suppose it's the weather. The weather is always, people nowadays, they think that, I mean this respectfully, but that, if you've paid to go somewhere, and we've had a lot of wealthy people going down there, that it should be accessible, whereas you have to be patient with Antarctica and the polar regions in general. If the weather closes in, you can't do anything. You can't disembark the ship to go ashore. You can't fly that plane in there to sort of bring people out because it's the end of their trip or whatever. We've had people on super yachts down there that have been stuck there for 2, 3, 4 days, because the weather's closed in, so you can't get the plane there. It's the nature of the beast, and Antarctica, it is a beast, and it's a beautiful beast, but you've got to be very respectful of that still, you know. And I think these days the world is so accessible, which is great in some ways, and in a way it makes our jobs a lot easier. But equally, you've got to be respectful of that and realise that you're still working corners of the world that are inaccessible.
Do you ever have some really tricky customers?
Yeah. We do. That's all I'm going to say. No. We do have tricky customers, but you see it from both sides as well. You know, in terms of they've paid a lot of money to do X or Y, and sometimes it's difficult to deliver that, as I say, because of weather or something like that. But it's, you know, we've had some people that have been, for example, stuck in Antarctica, and I was like, look, we can't get your plane in to get you out. And they're like, well, I'll just pay more. And it's like, well, no, it's not quite about the money, but I appreciate the offer.
We need a bigger plane.
Yeah, exactly. It's more just about the safety element of it. So, you know, you have to sort of take that on the chin sometimes. And generally people are very understanding, you know, in terms of when it comes to that safety aspect, you know, you've got to take it on board.
Adventure, travel, you know, things going wrong with travel is actually a part of the experience, isn't it?
Exactly.
Have you ever had a situation in your travel where things have gone terribly wrong?
Yeah, no, we've had a few of them. Some of them I'd talk about, some of them I wouldn't. But that's the sort of, again, that's the nature of the beast. But I mean, just now we've just come back from Antarctica, for example. Basically, we were staging that from South Africa to access from there. So we have a private jet taking you down into Antarctica. Then the jet had issues, which was nothing to do with the flight to Antarctica, but that needed to be repaired. So then we had another plane to take us down. But then the trip was put back 2 or 3 times, I think, when we were in Cape Town waiting to sort of depart. And that was purely because of the weather windows. You know, you've got very finite sort of windows to often operate in. Just the day before we left as well, the new COVID variant came out, the Omicron. And so we left, and I'd spoken to my office beforehand, and I was meant to be in the States. So, you know, following this trip, so I had 10 days of back-to-back meetings, as did the client. And so we said, look, you need to inform us if the US looks as though it's going to close. So we got to Antarctica, got a message that the States was closing, spent 48 minutes in Antarctica and got on the plane and came back.
Seriously?
So it wasn't the most successful trip. We left the clients there because they didn't need to come back, and this was a special case when we could leave the clients and they were looked after and hosted correctly, and we're in contact with them 24 hours a day, so that wasn't a problem. But the lead client on the trip and myself came back, and then we were trying to get to the States, and obviously then that shut down quite quickly as well because of this variant. And then we managed to get back to Kenya. And then, so instead of spending time in Antarctica in the States, I spent 10 days in hotel quarantine in the UK, just outside Heathrow.
I was going to get around to that because you're fresh out of at the time I was talking, you're 2 days out of hotel quarantine.
Yeah.
I mean, how insane did you go?
It was weird. I was quite anxious about going in, actually. I was quite worried that I was going to sort of get quite stressed. And actually, it went really quickly, which was quite strange. And I worked a lot, and that was pretty much it. And then it was the next day, and then you did the same again. The meals, as everyone has said, weren't particularly great, but you know, in terms of when you look at things in context of what goes on in the world, you know, you had 4 walls, you were warm, you had hot food and hot and cold water, so you can't complain that much. I just think it was managed a bit sort of strangely from the sort of political side of it, you know, so that's a whole nother discussion. But no, the actual quarantine was pretty dismal, but you've just got to get your head around it and get on with it. You know, we had a sort of, you know, 20 metre by 20 metre car park to walk around, and that was it for 20 minutes a day. I met someone there and we had a little mulled wine sessions in the yard sometimes, obviously socially distanced, of course.
How did you get the wine? Do they allow you to have alcohol? I think I'd just get trashed for the whole 11 days on my own.
Well, yeah, so you could have, you could get orders in, so you could do delivery and stuff like that. And then it was a bit sort of prison style, so we would boil mulled wine in the kettle, and that was it.
I'm not sure if they have that in prison, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. The mulled wine, please. But no, I also realised that if it did get too much and I wanted to end it all, I thought, well, I can't jump out the window because the window didn't open, so that was a bit of a nightmare. Then I thought, I can't string myself up from the light bulb because it was spotlights. And I said, well, okay, the last thing would be a toaster in the bath, but I didn't have a bath and I didn't have a toaster, so I was stuck there for 10 days.
We're joking about it, but did you genuinely have sort of dark thoughts about it?
No, I was pretty good actually in terms of, I can understand how that happens, but I say it in jest. I think weirdly in terms of, it was day 6 that was the worst day for me. I don't know why, it's 10 days in quarantine, but day 6, everyone that I was in touch with that was also in quarantine, everyone had a bad day on day 6. And I don't know why. It must be something, how the human body works or something like that. It was quite strange. But
there must be some psychological reason for it, mustn't there? I mean, that's sort of over halfway through, but you've still got a long way to go.
So you'd think that you'd sort of, but no. So my office definitely, because I was on the phone to them, they definitely all knew that I was struggling on that day. They sort of kept their distance.
I would be really going out of my mind. I mean, I had to quarantine last summer when I came back from Spain for 14 days in my flat at the time with my kids, and that was really hard. I really, really struggled. But are you used to spending quite a lot of time on your own? Because have you done a lot of solo travel, expeditions and things like that?
I've done quite a lot, in terms of, so a lot of the recce's I do are often by myself. So I can remember, Kate's sitting here with us now, but she was one of the only people I was in touch with when I was in Siberia. So we're tracking Siberian tigers out there. So, and that's working with a conservationist in the middle of nowhere. So I think it's 3 or 4 hours from London to Moscow. Then you get a connecting flight, which is another 12 or 14 hours east to Far Eastern Russia. You arrive there in Khabarovsk. Then it's a 4.5 to 5 hour drive across the tundra in this sort of diesel fueled sort of ex-army vehicle. And you arrive into this forest reserve where there's no one and just in these little wood cabins, very basic, and you've got no comms at all. So I'd occasionally get a sat link connection, and so I'd get a message out to Kate, and she'd sort of let me know what was going on, and I'd send little updates to her and stuff like that. So that was that was sort of very much by ourselves there, and I've done that. And so I lived in Cameroon in the middle of the bush for a year as well. So there are various sort of things that makes me think that, okay, hotel quarantine, whilst I sort of complained about it a bit, it wasn't the hardest thing in the world.
You can't just drop, I've lived in the bush in Cameroon for a year on my own, into the conversation without me sort of picking up at that. So tell me about your year in the bush in Cameroon.
So that was when I was intervening sort of university years. So most people went away my friends and stuff went to Paris to a university or something like that. But I spent a year living with a Bantu family down in the sort of central south area, sort of in the Francophone area. So lived there and ran a development project. So was doing various sort of construction work, teaching, animal husbandry, distance learning, etc., etc. So working for this very small foundation there. So that was sort of, that was quite a sort of solitary project as well.
What was the standout moment for me? It was a year, but give me some standout moments from that time.
Standout moment was probably going home.
No, thank God!
Exactly. No,
I'm out of the bush.
Yeah, exactly. It was sort of, so it was within about an hour's walk of the nearest sort of village or town where you could buy a beer and stuff like that. So so you were in contact, but I don't know. The standout moments were really sort of making it work. So in terms of, I ended up getting a builder who I'd worked with in the UK to come out for about 6 to 8 weeks to help build this resource centre. So it was actually seeing tangible things coming from what you'd sort of put in place, the distance learning courses, etc. Build a football pitch, as everyone does, so cleared an area of bush.
Dig a well, to do a well as well?
No, I didn't do the well, but we did the football pitch. But we, sort of little things like that, which had which without sounding too sort of, I don't know, it's just the little things which had a big impact, on myself and on the people that I was working with. So it was good.
Did you feel isolated from back home?
Yeah, no, that was still sort of, sound old now, but that was basically no emails. If it was very sort of, wind up the computer and cross your fingers that the email gets through. But it was still sort of, writing letters and stuff like that. So I'd walk out to the post office sort of once a week to see if I had any mail, and that was the time, you'd read the letter 5-10 times over the next however long, and you keep your letters and you reread them, which, looking at it now is quite nice, isn't it?
It is. It's lovely thinking about those times that letters meant so much, didn't they? Being in touch with people meant so much, and writing them and receiving them. And it was actually good in one way to have that sort of impassioned and emotional response to something, but obviously not as good because you can't just pick up a phone and talk to someone when you need to. What was it about coming home that stood out? Was it just an incredible feeling?
I think it's always difficult in terms of with travel. I think it's the transient periods, and you will have had this, I'm sure, as well, in terms of before you go away and when you come back. It's that sort of that transient period, which I think is always quite tricky. I think you love it and it's the excitement, but if you're going away, you're half here and your brain is half somewhere else, thinking about if it's work or whatever, what you've got to do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to structure it. And the same when you're coming back, you come back and it's exciting to be back and see everyone that you sort of love and spend time with and stuff. But equally, it takes time for part of you to catch up with yourself, back in the sort of Western world, and even in sort of from 10 days in hotel quarantine, it's quite weird sitting here now, sort of interacting with people. It's like, okay, that's strange.
It does. That's a really good point. Those sort of transient days before you go on a trip, but also when you're about to come home. I get that even when I'm just going to Spain to see my family, where I go very often. You don't have to be in the bush in Cameroon, although that obviously, adds another dimension. But you start to almost leave the place you're in, and that makes you feel sad, yet also looking forward and planning. And so it's one of those, it's a time of great reflection.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the beauties of travel. That's what it gives us. It gives us that step out of the mundane and the everyday, a greater level of intensity. And those transient periods around the actual travel itself, and going from one place to the other, are really quite intense sometimes.
No, for me, it's always strange. Probably one of the most intense periods for me on travel is when I get on the plane and I'm sitting on the plane. In terms of, until then, I'm not really engaged in what I'm doing. I've packed my stuff and I'm en route and stuff like that. But I always find that a really emotional time, in terms of, not bad emotional, but I can really sort of tap into sort of my thoughts and feelings, and I write a lot in those situations. And I don't know, it's that sort of, you're there, you're in your little sort of, you're compartmentalized and you're on your way, and then you can really sort of set your mind to thinking about friends, family, kids, or what you're doing or whatever. It's a really sort of, everything is ramped up. It's a really sort of intense emotional time. I love it.
It is. And you have children. You have 3 boys, don't you?
Yeah.
Because I know you've got one more than I have, so extra work.
Yeah.
How does that work with your traveling?
Generally, it's not too bad. They're used to it nowadays, in terms of, I've always done it. So it's sort of, it's easier to deal with than you would think. And they sort of, it's quite sweet in terms of, we were talking about something the other day with my son, and it came up, and I said something like, so what do you think of my job? What's the highlight? He said, well, you're an explorer. I tell everyone you're an explorer, Daddy. And I was quite chuffed, in terms of, I'm not an explorer, in terms of, this very sort of exciting way to put it. And it's nice to see that from a child's point of view. But there are sort of, I think it's very easy to jump on the explorer bandwagon these days, and there are definitive explorers out there. I'm just very fortunate in the job that I do, that I get to see and access a lot of areas in the world. And through the company, we try and do it differently. You know what I mean? In terms of, if it's tracking Siberian tigers, in terms of the largest feline predator left on the planet, not many companies do that. Or we're the first company to sort of legally set up swimming with blue whales in Sri Lanka, and sperm whales in Dominica and stuff like this. These are all sort of things we try and do differently, and we work with a lot of sort of profiles that sort of help us along the way, in terms of photographers, conservationists, etc. as well, which is great. What's the best thing about doing your job? Before, I think it was accessing wildlife, and now I think, as I've grown up, I think it's probably accessing the people that surround the wildlife, the communities, the conservationists, the people that have a direct impact on the environments that you're in, which I think, when I first had the opportunity to do this, I think, you're excited to be able to see sort of this amazing wildlife, and it's still a great privilege to do that. But then I think it's even more of a privilege to be able to interact with the people that surround that wildlife and those environments, which are key to their survival as well. If you don't sort of engage with those communities, then the wildlife won't survive anyway. So it's essential. It feels like you're very engaged with your surroundings and active on your journeys, which is a big part of it. And going back to what your kids said about being an explorer, that is certainly exploring. You don't have to be slinging on a backpack and going solo somewhere, although you often are, to be an explorer. I very much believe in exploring at home, particularly in times when we can't travel as much, or for whatever reason people might not be able to travel as much for money or time or kids or work. I absolutely think you can be an urban explorer in your own city, and that's something that I love doing personally. But is there ever any time that you just switch off when you travel? Have you, what's been the most serene and peaceful moment for you? Probably something like that time in Siberia. I think that was pretty isolated. I mean, also we do an area in Madagascar which is pretty unexplored. We're one of the first I think we're the first company in there, but which is in the central area of Madagascar, and that was walking. I was hosting a journalist there and also someone filming, and it was just walking in this area which was just sand valleys. It was a bit like I imagine, was it Joshua National Park? Is it? Yeah, in the States. with all the sort of sandstone eroded valleys and riverways and stuff, but there was just no one there at all. You know, and you just sort of get in a rhythm and you're walking and you're just looking at and engaging with what's sort of going on around you. And that's sort of, that's a real privilege to be able to access those areas. We're in little one-man tents, which they were meant to be two-man tents, but I think it's the smallest two-man tent that I've ever been in. I don't think I could even lie down in it. I think my head was out of the end, which was great for stargazing, but not for mosquitoes. But yeah, and it's those moments when you're just sort of lying there and you're sort of like, yeah, this is really lucky to be able to do this with sort of a handful of like 6 people there with you, and that's it. You know, it's pretty amazing.
And where do you see things going now? You know, we've had the pandemic. You have been grounded a little bit, but you're obviously travelling again now. You just spent 48 minutes in the Antarctic. I mean, who's done that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it could be a record, yeah. Not one to be proud of.
Let's stick a flag down, get a handful of snow, off you go. I mean, do they have souvenirs?
No, exactly, they didn't.
They're missing a trick, seriously.
Yeah, exactly. No, should have just quickly nabbed a penguin or something like that.
Next time you should nab a penguin.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah, what's next for you?
I don't know, you say the pandemic's over, is it?
No, did I say it's over? I don't think I did.
No, it's sort of, I think, I know what you mean, it's sort of, it seems to be lifting. I think in terms of the things next is we want to get the business sort of back running up to sort of the right stage again, but we're trying to sort of do that in a more sort of conscientious way as well. I think when COVID hit sort of it's now almost 20 months ago, I think, or something like that. It was quite interesting to see in terms of you saw, you know, empty streets with sort of deer walking down the streets and stuff like that, you know, sort of, and it was like, this is a chance for the world to change. I was sort of looking at that, sort of slightly excited in a way. I thought, okay, this is the sort of kickstart we need to sort of change our priorities and stuff. And it was talked about and things. And I think the sad thing is, and we're guilty of it as well, is that everyone seems to just sort of be cranking up the machines again, you know, straight back into what we were before, which I think is a missed opportunity to reset the priorities and stuff. And it's easy to sit here and say that, but I think we need to take a long, hard look at what we are prioritizing in sort of the world in relation to a lot of things in terms of, well, the obvious one is climate change, etc. And I think it's just a bit of a shame that we're just sort of jumping straight back into where we were before. And we're guilty of doing it as well. We're trying to run things sort of on a sort of elevate and refine it more in terms of what we were doing and how we were managing things. But also we need to be more conscious as a company and also worldwide in terms of what impact we're having on the surrounding environments and stuff. And, you know, COVID was basically, as far as we know, a result of human-wildlife sort of conflict, you know, sort of overlapping environmental areas, you know, which was in the wet markets, etc. Unless it did come from a lab. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that on
We don't know. Yeah, we can say what we like, but I just don't think anyone really knows at the moment, do they?
No, exactly. But that encroachment is sort of an issue, whether that was the cause of COVID or not. And I think that the travel industry has a huge responsibility there. But how we do that is very difficult to sort of work out. Travel can be a great force for good, but also it can be negative. So it's trying to get that balance right. We need to be sort of conscious of what's going on and be proactive on it and try and sort of manage things effectively and constructively, because what happens if something is suddenly shut down in one area across the world, it has a huge impact right through from the top down, you know, from companies like mine right down to the individual guide on the ground in Botswana or South Africa and stuff like that. And I think just dropping sort of travel bans on things without necessarily looking at the effective data there is, you've got to be careful with doing it. But I understand the reasons behind it as well. So it's a very fine balance. So I think it's difficult.
It is a fine balance. And I bang on about this all the time on TV and radio, is that we need to be able to be safe. Of course, safety is a priority, but we also need to keep people afloat.
Yeah.
And it's not just about big airlines and hotels and huge industries that employ a lot of people, which are of course very important. It's about the tiny little people and the businesses and the people on the ground, the taxi drivers, the tea rooms, you know, getting people to this country. We need tourism here. You know, it's not, we talk about travel as something of going away, but it's actually a mutual thing. We need to bring people here, and we do need to do it safely, but we absolutely need to carry on doing it. We really do.
Yeah,
for financial reasons, for emotional reasons, for connection reasons with friends, family, businesses, or people all over the world.
And I think the sort of, without getting too political about it, I think in the UK, the travel industry is often seen as the airlines. It's like, hang on a minute, there's a heck of a lot more than just the airlines. And the travel industry is one of the only industries in the last 18, 20 months that has not had industry sector specific support. And I think that's a great shame because there are a heck of a lot of exceedingly skilled people within the industry that are under a lot of pressure. And I think that needs to be looked at, in terms of the furlough scheme. I understand it, but the last thing we needed was people being paid to sit at home and not work. We need people to be paid to be in the office to help postponing all our clients, which we've had like a 94% success, 95% success of postponement of all our clients over the last 20 months, which is exceptional. And our clients want to, provide that loyalty, etc. So, I think that's a shame. We've needed the industry sector support and we haven't had it, and people still need it. Okay, you've got Sybil's loans, but you have to pay them back. You know what I mean? So it would be nice to sort of see some sort of dedicated support coming out for the industry, but it hasn't happened yet.
Fingers crossed, eh?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you my last question now.
Yeah.
My last question is always about music. I'm going to ask you to name one song that reminds you of a memorable time and place of travel. What is that song and what were you doing?
I think probably, it's a good question. A group I was like...
Hang on, what do you mean probably it's a good question?
no, probably I was thinking coming out with my answer.
It's a great question.
It's a fantastic question. Probably my answer is I love my reggae, but I'm going to give that a miss. I'm going to go for Big Calm by Morcheeba. I always remember that was when I was leading a trekking trip through the Anti-Atlas Mountains in Morocco. And I think it was either sunrise or sunset, and we were on this ridgeline. And I left the clients alone for a bit, and I just had my Walkman at the time and listened to that track. And it's the vocals on it and the way the track sort of builds is fantastic. So sitting on a ridgeline there, a little moment of I think I'd been out there on a sort of 3 or 4 month contract, and it was just a sort of 5 minute sort of moment to myself, and that's always what stays with me. Yeah.
Morcheeba's pretty good for travel, absolutely,
yeah.
for moments like that, for Morcheeba moments. Reggae as well, I have to say. Reggae, if I'm in a beach bar, I want some reggae.
Yeah,
I want
definitely.
some Bob Marley. I want cocktails and the smell of fires burning nearby and some Bob Marley
Morcheeba
too.
were going to be playing in Brighton the other day, but it was cancelled. So, yeah, exactly. Been put back till February, so I'm waiting for that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Big Travel Podcast and for using this episode to launch your own podcast, Travel Podcasters Sticking Together. And I wish you every success, continued success with the business and with the podcast as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Where can we find you?
So the company is naturalworldsafaris.com. My Instagram is @Will Bolsover or Portraits on Humanity.
Wonderful.